All right, how you doing, everybody? On the Mike Nelson Show, I'm here with Jason McMaster, a legendary metal singer. How you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. So I just before we start off the interview, you have a podcast right now, right? Talk louder.
Yeah, the lockdown pandemic had created all kinds of cabin fever for a lot of people. A friend of mine called me. He says, "Hey, how about you and your buddy Dave get together and do a podcast where you guys just talk about metal and blah 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 blah?" And I'm like, "Well, that sounds fun." And we had to come up with a name for it. And Talk Louder, I came up with that, and we just here we are, a little over a year later. We've done 100 episodes, so it's just crazy. TalkLouderPodcast.com is the website. We've had a lot of great people. I'm stoked because I'm such a fan of hard rock and metal and artists, writers and authors and musicians that it's been a great vehicle just even as a fan to like go, wow, that's cool. I'm talking to Ripper Owens or Danko Jones or George from Rhino Bucket or Todd Latore from Queensryche or whatever. There's some name dropping for you, some people
Yeah.
we've had on the
So you've
podcast.
been doing it for like a year now, then the podcast, or a couple years
We
now,
started in February of last year, so it's been over a year now, so a year and a half maybe.
and the podcast is also on a YouTube, right? You guys do a little film
Yeah,
version as well of it.
it's on all the digital. Yeah, we pre-record, and it's on all the digital platforms as well as YouTube. And we release them weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. So our next week we have Charlie Benanti from Anthrax coming
Wow,
on.
perfect timing with the reunion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this was before it was announced, so
Wow.
we taped that his
Oh,
segment like maybe 10 days ago, going on 2 weeks ago.
oh, okay,
So yeah, it was before it had been leaked out
okay.
that he was
Sounds
that his involvement at all what hadn't been talked about.
wow. Okay, so yeah, that's too bad. Okay. All right. So I wanted to ask you, how did it all start for you? How did you get into this kind of music? What's your journey? How did it start off? Why did you want to be a singer? How did it start out?
Wow. Okay. From the babysitter to my older brothers,
Okay.
the record collections were an immediate influence um, from the age of like probably 5 years old. Elton John, Queen, Alice Cooper, and then Kiss, and then Rush, and then UFO, and Thin Lizzy, and Ted Nugent, and it just goes and goes and goes. And all of those, even Elton John and Alice Cooper, there was a great sort of theatrical thing. When I found Kiss, it was just like, whoa, they're having all the fun. And Kiss is kind of a gateway to things heavier. When you're a little kid, the words heavy and metal hadn't even come together in a sentence yet. So, and even Kiss, it was still rock and roll. You're still calling in the '70s, it was still rock and roll. Late '70s, early '80s, you start to say the words heavy metal. So I've been playing and producing, writing, heavy metal, as well as in my later years, many other types of music, performing, writing, producing, releasing. Um, but it also, I have three brothers. My youngest brother, I have two older. My youngest brother turned me on to AC/DC and Judas Priest, which are staple for me and most people. A neighborhood friend at an early age turned me on to Kiss. That changed my life dramatically. And it was the babysitter when I was a mere like 5 years old that turned me on to Elton John. She's playing records. I'm like, what the hell is this? This is amazing. And my little brain was just like firing on all cylinders when I heard this music. And it could have been Yellow Brick Road. It could, who knows, right? And I think it was the Yellow Brick Road album. Uh, and yeah, my mind kept being blown record after record after record after new band. And Queen was like the first band that was kind of like, well, as much as probably Alice and Elton, Queen, which my oldest brother I think bought me News of the World. They're like this proto metal band, but they wrote like rock opera and they wrote ballads and they wrote like ragtime songs and they're writing like little ditties that sound like boop boop be doop ragtime stuff, but then with like prophet song and death on two legs and shit like that, you're going, whoa, they're detuning and it's 1973. That's like Black Sabbath shit, and you don't realize this until later on that Queen actually had a metal tonality to them, and you just didn't realize or even question why this song is so heavy. And then you hear We Are the Champions, which is this big dramatic, like ballet kind of sachet type of an anthem, still a rock anthem, but you see what I mean. It was this dynamic, all under one umbrella called Queen, and you could say the same thing about Alice Cooper and Elton John. So I really always liked that. So when Kiss came along, they were writing kind of an early butt rock, kind of a glam, a New York. They were from New York. They were tough, but they had all this other shit going on too, which is related to in some way to the other three guys I mentioned, Queen, Elton, and Alice, right? Who are very dramatic and theatrical and kind of glammed out a little bit, but heavy and weird and scary and dark and light and tongue-in-cheek humor the whole time in the lyrics. Kind of important. So there was this theme that influenced me to become basically a heavy metal guy, which wasn't too far a throw from just being heavily influenced later on by AC/DC and Judas Priest.
Yeah, speaking about Kiss, yesterday I was listening to Alive 2. You know how side four has that studio. Those tracks are really underrated. All American Man. Don't you think that side four is really underrated?
Yeah, those are great songs.
Yeah, really great production on them. You know how like some of the early Kiss, like Hotter Than Hell, doesn't have great production, but I feel like this for some reason on the live albums they always had better production.
Yeah, the bad production of the early 70s Kiss records, the first three records, never bothered me and still doesn't bother me. Any kind of bad production, it's about the songs. If those, I mean, there's bands that record lo-fi on purpose.
Yeah,
There's bands like heavy bands, like sludge bands, or even black metal bands. They'll find the crappiest microphone in the pawn shop. I want the $5 microphone. I'm going to record my bass with that, my drums with that, my guitars, and then my vocals, like Bathory and shit like that.
yeah,
Like they're recording
yeah.
lo-fi so it'll be this certain thing that has become like an underground way
Well, it's
of doing.
legendary now, pretty much. What
Totally.
Bathory did is basically
Yeah.
legendary with black
So
metal.
there's a certain way of lo-fi sounding stylistically, not just because I can't afford the nice mics or the preamps or I don't know Pro Tools. I'm just gonna make a record on my jam box. Well, the people that did that changed the fucking world. So old hardcore, early black metal, there's something to that a fan is like, oh, it's too polished, and it's like you wouldn't have even known the difference if it wasn't for early hardcore, early Kiss, early Venom, Bathory, black metal, where it's actually can be incredibly hard to record to get the separation between the instruments. The sound as good as Slayer, Rain and Blood. See what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And just to ask you, you played bass right at the beginning. You learned bass before you became a singer. How was that
Ba-
process?
Bass was my first instrument. My mom and my oldest brother Mitch went to a pawn shop and got me an inexpensive bass guitar, and my journey. That was my journey. I grew up around a stand-up piano, but you don't want to hear me on piano. As big as an Elton fan as I am, you don't even want to hear me on keys. I'm terrible, and I just never took the time to figure it out because I was really drawn to, guitars. Uh, the uh, the bass is still. I still tell people it's my main instrument, my first instrument. I've never set out to be the greatest bass player in the world, but I spent so many summers, years and years and years sitting around learning to play Kiss songs and Black Sabbath songs and Iron Maiden songs and Judas Priest songs, record after record after record. I would spend the whole summer while my friends are outside playing, riding wheelies down, setting shit on fire and all that. I'm in my room dropping the needle on LPs with my bass in my hand. I didn't even know how to tune the damn thing. And I'm like just trying to finding the string and going brr brr, oh that's good, and just tuning to whatever I thought they were doing, and like I would find my way. And then later on you start to go have these aha moments like, oh I see, but I'm totally self-taught and everything, and I think I preferred it that way.
Then like learning how to write music and go to like a conservatory and all that.
Yeah, that came later after I played in a few cover bands, and um, I was afraid of the microphone. I was like, didn't even have any interest in being a singer until the band I was in couldn't find a singer, and so I'm playing bass, and my drummers were, what are we gonna do? This singer's terrible. And then we just decided, me and my buddy, we just decided we'll just do it. Surely we're as least as terrible as them, or maybe even a little bit better than our crappy singer that we have, and so that sort of spawned, us like figuring out how to do it on our own, and that would have been early 80s. 80, about 80 or 81, I started to, it wasn't until then that I started to really approach the microphone. But I had a bass in my hand originally when I was a singing bass player for a little while.
And this was when you were
Uh,
still at Corpus Christi. You had a band down there.
right after my first band down at Corpus was called Rampage, and I was the youngest guy in the band, and it didn't last very long. And I think I cramped their style a little bit because I was younger, you know. And we'd be at a backyard party playing all our cover songs, and I'd just be all bright-eyed and way into it, and they were trying to pick up girls,
Yeah,
and I
you're
was
just a
like,
little kid.
I just wanted to play rock and roll,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's play some more songs. They're like, hey, hold on a second, I'm talking to these girls. I understand it now, but so anyway, I mean, that's probably not even how it went down as to why I was let go from my very first band. Of course I was bummed because I was having so much fun being in my first band. It's kind of, but you learn. Bands come and go. There's a reason you end up working with the people you end up working with. But I moved to Austin in '80 as a bass player, and then formed a band there called Fallen Angel, and then started singing really soon after that, and was a singing bassist for about 8 or 9 months until I was asked by a band called Watchtower to be their front person. Like they heard me sing and they were like, "Yeah, we want you to be our singer." I'm like, "What? That's crazy." Without my bass? And then I heard their bass player and I was like, "Oh yeah, you need to have this. I need to stop playing bass because Doug Keyser is a monster on bass." So
Yeah, I'm a huge Watchtower fan. I play a lot of
nice.
Watchtower on my show. So actually, this interview is gonna be more about Watchtower. But how did the
Yeah,
Watchtower project start off? You got asked to do it. Were they already playing without you?
I was. Yeah, they had a singer before me. His name was Travis, and I used to. I'm old now. My memory's going, but Travis, can't remember his last name at the moment. Maybe it'll come to me. And I never got to meet Travis, which is too bad because I know that we'd have a lot of fun talking about how weird it was back then, but and how everything transpired. We were kids, so you don't know how to treat each other when you're kids. But anyway, I was in Fallen Angel. We had lost our guitar players, Fallen Angel. We were looking to just meet more people. We weren't looking to headhunt another guy. I was in a music store. It was 1982, uh, like spring of '82 or something. And I go to a music store and I see a like a calling card, it's an ad on a bulletin board. And it's a bunch of crap up there, and I see this one little hand drawn with rapidograph pen, really badass artwork, and it was just on like a postcard size thing, and it had a Watchtower logo, not the one everyone knows, just an early version of a Watchtower logo with, you know, sounds dumb, but a big castle and a dragon or whatever, and it says available for parties, and it had phone numbers of the dudes in the band on when you could do that. Right, that
Yeah.
was pre-email. We're
Yeah.
talking, we're little kids. I stole the card because this is it said heavy metal available to play your parties. Well, they're kids, so of course they're saying we can play parties. We're not old enough to play a real venue or a bar. So I was like, these guys got to be my age, blah blah. So I get it, and I call them, and I call Billy, the guitar player, Billy White, and I say, hey, you don't know me. My name's Jason. I'm in this band, Fallen Angel. We're looking for a guitar player. I'm not trying to, steal you from your band. I don't know anybody. I'm trying to look for people who are like you, who want to do what you and I are trying to do. And he was like, we've heard of you. And I'm like, what? How is it? I hadn't even been in Austin a year. Oh, okay, maybe a year at that point. Year and change. And I mean, Fallen Angel had done like a couple of backyard parties, two or three. We had played in our own backyard. We had done a couple of things. We're like 17, 17 years old. Can't do much when you're 17. You can do something, but so as far as depending on your resources, right? So uh, Billy invites me over, and he said, "Bring your bass, bring your gear," and I was awesome. So I come over and we meet, and I'm like checking out his room. Oh yeah, man, cool. Iron Maiden and Priest post, Ozzy, Randy, and he's like, all right. And he shuts the door, picks up his guitar, and starts playing Randy Rhoads solos. And you know, he was one of those kids at age 15, 16, 17 that could play. He could hear it one time and pretty much play it. And when the first Yngwie Malmsteen Rising Force record came out, he learned all the solos in like a day.
Wow.
It's like, what? Yeah, who
Yeah.
who can do that?
Yeah.
What is up with that?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Especially that
obviously,
young, you know.
yeah, he was this wonder kid kind of thing. So I meet him. He goes, uh, "Hey, let's go over to Doug's house and hang out." I'm like, "Okay, awesome." I didn't even touch my bass that day. I heard him play guitar, and I was just like, "Yeah, I'm putting my bass back in the case." And we go to Doug's, and we hang out with Doug Keezer all night long, and we run around all over town and raise hell. We're young teenagers, and I have a car, and we're just raging, man. And we go to UT campus, and we're air guitar, and we're just being tearing it up, just having the best time being punk teenagers. And the next day they were rehearsing. Hey, dude, come to our rehearsal. And I'm like, I am so there. I can't wait to meet Travis and see you guys jam. So I'm there, and I don't show up too early. I show up after they've already started playing. Right. I knock on the door, and the parents let me in, and I get in there, and the singer's not there. So I'm standing in the doorway of Billy's bedroom where there's a drum kit in my face, and there's a guitar amp here and a bass amp here, and they're just raging, playing their own material, which was early versions of what the world would come to know as this strange, odd, very Rush influenced prog rock metal shit. And I had never heard anything like it before. And since there's no vocals going on, I have no idea where they're really headed with this. And I'm just jaws on the floor the whole time. Oh my God. And they play for like 30 minutes or more. And they say, I guess he's not showing up, referring to Travis, their singer. and would you like to sing some songs? I'm like, oh my God, hell yeah. They had a piece of paper that was hanging literally right by my face on the wall. And I'll go, pick one. They just said, pick one of those out. And there's like 30 songs. And I know about half of them already. I'm like, hell yeah. The first song I sang, I sang on Travis's microphone, his PA, it's
Wow.
like I felt dirty, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Sucks. God, sucks. I wish I could have met him just so we could talk. But anyway, never did. It's weird.
It's weird, yeah.
Um, the first song I ever sang with Watchtower was Motorcycle Man by Saxon.
Wow. You still
Yeah.
remember that first song, huh?
Oh, yeah. I remember exactly the story I just told like it was yesterday. It's crazy. But
And
and that was a long relationship.
and all those 30 songs were like what Savage songs, Kiss songs, UFO, that kind of music, Rush.
Mostly Rush. Let me kind of like fill in the void a little bit. It was like a week later, maybe 2 weeks later. I think it was like a week later. Billy calls my house and he goes, "Cause I hung out with those guys and we had a great time and da 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 da." And days go by, we were staying in touch a little bit, but a week had gone by and Billy calls and he goes, "Hey man, I got something I need to talk to you about." I'm like, "Dude, what's up?" He goes, "Well, we want you to be our singer. We just took Travis all his equipment and we want you to be our singer." Just like that.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, you got to think about how long it is that I've been singing. It hadn't been very long at all. And whether I was any good or not is beside the point. I was probably terrible, dude. But the fact that they met someone with the like nerd brain that I did and the excitement that I had about playing heavy metal with like-minded people, I believe that that's what it was. That, you know, combined with what little experience I had, uh, probably got me the gig. And I wasn't auditioning. That was not an audition. I was just hanging out and they asked me to sing some tunes, right? So they thought I was cool, like cool enough, I guess, to be in their band, and they called and asked, and I had to call my partners in Fallen Angel that we were actively looking for replacement guitar players, and I go, dude, there's nothing going on with us. What do you think? How do you tell me how you really feel about this?
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, you need to go for this. That sounds awesome. The glow that you had when you came back to me after you went jam with these dudes you just met, you need to go do that. And I would bring those dudes over to the Watchtower jam and go,
Wow.
y'all gotta meet these guys, man. Whoa! And it was, yeah, that it was long. It was a great time in my life. So, yeah. But yeah, the cover songs. You know, I talked those guys into doing stuff that they were reluctant to do, but I'll start with the sort of odd birds that, for people who know Watchtower as this pioneer in like technical thrash, prog metal before that was even a term, maybe even a grandfather of this style. Uh, I had talked those guys into doing like, okay, you're gonna laugh, maybe, maybe not. Uh, Motley Crue Too Fast for Love was a brand new record on an independent label called Leather Records. They were not a big thing. It was like an underground. It had been independently released. So when you see those scenes in the movie The Dirt,
Yeah.
where it's like early days and they're trying to come up with the name of the band and they have like one video out and they haven't even toured yet. Well, their records in a record store, and I find it, and the dudes at the record store, you need to listen to that. It's raw. And Livewire,
Yeah.
came on. I'm like, dude. So I bought the record, took it over to Billy's, and of course he learned it right away. And that night at rehearsal, we learned it and we played it.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
when I first heard Twisted Sister, Under the Blade, What You Don't Know Sure Can Hurt You, I talked those guys into playing that, and the first time we heard Accept, we learned the songs the day we heard the records, and we did the songs. So, yes, we did like odd UFO songs, but we also did Lights Out, and I think we did Rock Bottom. as far as like Iron Maiden, we did like 13 Iron Maiden
Wow.
songs. Old, you know, like Number of the Beast was brand new, so we did first album Killer stuff and Beast stuff. We did, Queen of the Reich. You know, that may have been the only. Uh, we didn't do Lady Wore Black, but
No,
we might have done another one off that EP.
that was a tough one to sing for sure.
Well, you couldn't tell me that. No one was going to stop me from trying. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That was the beauty of
Yeah.
being young and dumb and insane. Was, you've got all the players that can play anything, and then I was still working on my voice because singing that style is weird when you're young, 17, 18, right? Your voice
Yeah.
just changed, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of Priest. We did about 10 Priest songs, and it was, Victim of Changes and Beyond the Realms of Death and Sinner and, all of the good shit. And those were and a bunch of Saxon, and the bands played on was one we loved to play. Obviously, Motorcycle Man, uh, yeah, Denim and Leather, Strong Arm of the Law, all the good shit. New wave of British heavy metal stuff. We did Angel Witch. Uh, can't remember. I don't think we did any Anvil, but we did a bunch of Raven songs. Faster Than the Speed of Light, Wiped Out, Rockin' Till You Drop. All of the good shit, man. It was a great time, 82, 83, 84. It was like, holy moly. But by the time 83 and 84 came around, it was definitely leaning towards more of our own material and developing that material to become what is now known as the Energetic Disassembly album.
And that album was recorded in '83 first, right? And then you guys didn't release it because your record
That
company went out of business. Is that correct?
that is, yeah, yeah. Basically, you got it spot on. There was we had befriended San Antonio Slayer, just known as Slayer to us back then, and they had a record out already, an EP called Prepare to Die, which was kind of like early Merciful Fate, meets Priest or something, and I was just like, oh my God, you guys are my favorite Texas band, and Hellstar put out a record on Combat the same time, and all this shit was happening in Texas, and we were attempting to gel with those guys, and we were already playing shows with those guys, and it was an important time for us, and we were striving to get a record out, but we just didn't, what we tried as early as 83 to make a record, and then we got new equipment, and we said, oh, we got to re-record the record with our new gear, new drum kit. It's going to sound totally different, new amplifier, it's going to sound different. My vocals had changed a little bit, so that Energetic was recorded probably 2 times before the final recording ended up coming out, and those old recordings are flying around out there.
Wow. And the course, the final recording in '85, you guys self-produced the whole thing. You had your own record label. How did that happen? How did you guys have to pretty much save up for 2 years then to do that?
Well, we got kicked out of Billy White's bedroom rehearsal. We were old enough, we were driving, we needed to, hey, you got, it's like my mom and dad want us to find a new place to rehearse. And I'm like, that makes way too much sense. I bet they've been holding the torch for us for too long. And his parents were amazing to put up with all that craziness, because it wasn't exactly easy listening coming out of the under the cracks in the windows and doors. It was insane. It's, Watchtower's not everyone's cup of tea. It's a crazy style of music. So we started rehearsing it wherever we could. We actually rehearsed in a beauty salon a couple of times. A friend of ours, family, it was a family-run business, and he go, "Well, I have the keys to my parents' beauty salon, and y'all can jam in there a couple of times." I'm like, "What? That's crazy!" Those big old like beehive helmet, like hair
Yeah, yeah.
dryers that with like Star Wars cube, kind of thing. With those, like, imagine like 100 of those, and we're set up in a room around those playing Watchtower songs.
Wow.
Insane. Um, we we ended up rehearsing in a somewhat proper rehearsal room, which was still just a gutted out storage unit, right? That was actually run by a guy named Fred Mitchum, who heard us from the first day he heard us rehearse. We rented a room and he was like, a bunch of punks gonna play some shitty music or whatever. So we closed the door and we're rehearsing and yada yada yada. And I walk out of the rehearsal room and he's standing there going, "What kind of music is that?" You know, he was falling in love with what would become Watchtower, and it was like, well, it's like he's like, "Why do you sing so high?" I'm like, "You ever heard Led Zeppelin and Geddy Lee and come on, where you were living under a rock?" And I'm like, "Dude, I sing high because that's the metal. You know, that's what. How would you sing over this crazy shit? You know, friendship. He became a friend of all of ours. A little bit of an older dude, played guitar in his own bands, and he ran the rehearsal unit. So we were there all the time. We ended up being there, you know, a new chapter, right? He helped us book time at Cedar Creek Recording, which ended up a bunch of classic Texas, like the Offenders recorded there, which is a legendary underground punk rock band, early hardcore band, which were actually from Killeen, right up the road from Austin. And anyway, he set it up, Cedar Creek. You know, he got some friends to put some money together. Some of the guys in Watchtower, Rick mainly, the drummer, put up you know, some bucks, and we went it. We booked some time, and we were done recording that by the end of '85, and it came out a month or two later.
And who wrote the lyrics for Watchtower? Was it kind of like you guys write it together, all the lyrics for the
Well,
songs?
that's a great question because Billy and Doug are these sort of like hyper intelligent human beings, and on another level, dude. I'm not even messing around. The lyrics they would write were about social matters and politics and current events and things like that. And the lyrics I was writing were about headbanging and thrashing and destruction. Metal, you know,
Yeah,
metal.
pretty much. Yeah.
So there were these other ways to. I learned a lot about how, you know, the only other like thing I could think of that came around the same time was like early Megadeth. Some Megadeth songs and what Mustaine was writing about were similar. The nuclear politics in the nuclear age coming together about, you know, that kind of thing was like, whoa, these are like news headlines, you know, and I'm a punk kid singing about it. And it was like, what? So these guys were very aware, but it was Billy writing and it was Doug writing the lyrics for even on into the songs that came out on Control and Resistance. Some of those songs were written by Billy and then Doug, of course, who was still in the band. But Billy left, you know, the end of '86, so he was in the band with a year under the belt of the release of Energetic, to be replaced by Ron Jarzombek, who's a whole other chapter in the story because he was really the only guy that could replace Billy.